Welcome, everyone, for another edition of Practice Perspectives. I'm Dr. Paul Henny with the Bob Barkley Study Club, and sharing this event with me is my co-host Stan Kingma and Susan Maples. I'm really excited about having Susan Maples here, a fellow University of Michigan graduate, and who has done wonderful things with her practice in Holt, Michigan. She's the author of 2 books. One of which is both are fantastic. This most recent one, Brave Parent, is a must read. It goes deep in so many important things, as far as microbiome to development to breathing to nutrition to even character development. So it's a fantastic book. So Susan has so much content. I think what I'm going to do is divide this interview into basically 2 segments. Segment 1, I want to kind of focus on how Susan got from graduating from the University of Michigan to where she is right now, the practice model she is living, as well as, sharing with the world how she's doing and what she's doing. And then the next segment after that we'll record will be more of a deep dive into the specifics of her philosophy, the application of her philosophy. So why don't I begin by just letting Susan introduce herself, and just kind of let's start from the beginning. Susan, how did you even choose dentistry as a profession?
Oh, wow. Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of your work, Paul, and a big fan of Bob Barkley's as well, though I never knew him personally. Wow, I was attracted to dentistry as a young person for a number of reasons, but I'm going to take you back a little before that. I was born of 2 parents who smoked 2 packs a day, and many of you know my backstory. My brother and I are only 13 months apart, so my mom was very anxious as a parent, and then she had my little brother in arms, or my big brother in arms, when I was all of a sudden conceived, and she got freaked out. So her doctor told her she should possibly increase her smoking to relieve her anxiety.
Wow.
So she doubled her smoking while she carried me. And it permanently affected my lungs. I was born in an oxygen tent for 3 months and had subsequently, I came home. I developed 52 allergies from all the antibiotics and medications I was taking. And we didn't know half of what we know now about that, right? And I had pneumonia 7 times hospitalized for pneumonia 7 times under the age of 12. So I was constantly with walking pneumonia, and then it would develop into something more significant. So I had a close tie with the medical system, which was unfortunate. It really, as I look back on it, shaped my viewpoint that the medical system was a bit of a mess. And if you can imagine that I'm now about to be 65 years old, the medical system is a freaking way more of a mess now than it was then.
Yes.
So that's been kind of sad. I met a physician at the age of 13 who, my mom was finishing a PhD in counseling, and she got a job at the College of Osteopathic Medicine at Michigan State. And my journey with a young internist who was willing to accept me as a patient, as a child, and she had time on her hands. And so she scheduled a couple hours for my intake and had read my chart cover to cover. My pediatrician had sort of given up on me, and she started working with me on, telling my story, what it had been like to be me going through all that she had read about in my chart. And no one had ever really asked me what it was like. I mean, as a sick child, you only have like your own experience, right? And you think it's somewhat normal, but I obviously knew it wasn't normal. I couldn't do what other kids did. I couldn't play outside. I couldn't sleep at my best friend's house because they had dogs and feather pillows, and I couldn't be without my inhalers. And I mean, I was, couldn't sleep without, my clothes always smelled like my vaporizer medicine and cigarette smoke. And I didn't feel comfortable standing next to other kids. And I had, I was a hot mess, as you would say. But in those days, I mean, allergies were kind of a freakish thing. Now it's like 1 in every 10 kids. And why has that happened in the blink of an eye? So we have a lot to talk about. But
Yeah.
I completely followed her lead, and she put me in the driver's seat for my preferred future. And by the end of a year of working with her, she saw me weekly, which you can imagine. She's an internist. We didn't have pediatric internal medicine. This was a trained physician for sick adults who took me on. I mean, what a blessing, right? So I began a journey of taking my own health seriously. And through exercise, I was able to retrain my lungs. And by changing my diet and exercise, I was able to get off all my allergy medications, get rid of all my allergies, and live a healthy life. And so I became very accustomed to a healthier lifestyle, attaching it to my everyday presence, right? And then I took my entire family in that direction. I literally I was grocery shopping with my bicycle with panniers on my bike, and my mom was allowing me to cook for my family. And, everything changed about that time. They started to understand that smoking was a health risk. It caused lung cancer, and my parents quit smoking. And I mean, a lot of things were changing. Anyway, to make a long story short, I chose dentistry at the age of 9 because I was wearing braces, and I wanted to figure out how to work with kids and how to get kids in an influential time in their life. And I didn't want medicine because I thought it was kind of a mess. So later in 1980, I went to Europe for a semester and did an independent project on the European healthcare system, because I was sort of at that time, maybe mindset of a young Hillary Clinton, thinking maybe I could change the world's medical system. And of course I was sorely disappointed. And I've been sad about anyone's ability to impact that. Even Michelle Obama, who took on children's health, was an abysmal failure in my mind.
Yeah.
We're involved in the most significant decline in human health that the world has ever known. We are 200 to 300,000 years old as a species. And the decline in every single way, not just oral health. I mean, it's an abomination that 20% of 2-year-olds have tooth decay. That's ridiculous, when the teeth should never decay. But the point is that it just parallels everything else that we're dealing with: cardiovascular disease and diabetes and chronic systemic inflammation from food sensitivities and acid reflux, and airway disorders and sleep and breathing disorders and autoimmune disorders and allergies and asthma. I mean, it's all increasing at an unbelievable rate. So when you look at the fact that 85% of what we're dealing with in this healthcare crisis, this unaffordable healthcare crisis, is from preventable disease, meaning if we could prevent it, we wouldn't have a healthcare crisis. And yet only 1% of our dollars in healthcare are spent on prevention, 1%. We don't get paid to have preventive conversations with people. We only get paid to pop a hole in a tooth and shove some man-made shit in it and call it a day. And, so I hate to tell you that 90% of our income comes from what we're doing, not how we're thinking. Medicine's the opposite. They get paid for thinking, not doing. And yet medicine has no room for prevention either. They're really focused on writing prescriptions and, funneling people in and out of crises. So
our system is disease care, not health care.
That's right. I always say the only thing missing from healthcare today is health and care. Other than that, we're good, right? Sad.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
the tail wags the dog. Follow the money, and that has evolved into this very dysfunctional system that isn't making anybody well. It's making some people rich, and it's enslaving a lot of other people to allow them to be rich. But I'll let you go. I don't want to sidetrack.
No.
Where you're headed.
It's a really good point. Everything you say will steer me in a different direction, so don't worry about that. I think that when we think about following the money trail, my mind immediately goes to much larger than the healthcare system, the food system. I mean, you can't trust the FDA or the USDA to give us healthy choices.
Right.
We have to really look at our relationships to food in our country, our relationships to convenience, and the food itself. What's on the GRAS list, generally regarded as safe, the emulsifiers, the thickeners, the flavors, the colorants, all this stuff that has not been vetted out for human use. And the sugar, oh my goodness, don't get me going.
Oh, yeah.
The sugar results in insulin resistance and obesity and diabetes and metabolic disease. So I think I think we're in a beautiful position. My other big passion has been business. I always wanted to have to be in business for myself. I have 6 businesses, unfortunately, a little too much, but I was influenced by 2 parents who were entrepreneurial, and so the success in business has been important to me. I finished an MBA in 1994. I was getting out of dentistry 7 years after. I bought a practice while I was in dental school, so I'm probably the only one, that bought a practice, was searching for practices my senior year in dental school, and started a practice a month after I got my license, or bought a practice, or it was in my practice without the other dentist. And it was a creative palette for me. It's been a wonderful thing to be in the same place for 39 years this next week. But I will also tell you that it was important to me to do it well. And I finished an MBA, and by 7 years in, I had been successful in practice. And I thought, I don't want to be part of a declining mess. And I could see that I was super busy drilling and filling, and this was not going to keep me in my, how would I say it? In my passion. So I decided to get out of dentistry, and I was going to go into corporate wellness. I was going to do some other things. One of my team members had a TMJ problem, and my brother had a TMJ problem. And I thought, well, I'll give myself 1 more year. I deferred my PhD in organizational development. I had been accepted into the program, and I deferred that and for a year. And then I started studying with Peter Dawson, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I went to the mountain and Moses delivered the tablets, right? I have a whole huge unlocking of complex restorative dentistry to open. And I got engaged in the whole artistic and, engineering side. I know, Stan, you kind of have that engineering background too. You get kind of into that sort of nerdy stuff. And of course, at that point, aesthetics was unfolding, and it was super fun. So I kind of split my time between leadership coaching for businesses outside of dentistry and then dentistry. So I had a whole significant career in helping other businesses become successful. Large churches and a big carpet company and a technology broker and some other companies that I helped grow on Thursdays and Fridays. That was my Friday job, right? So anyway, I had a really good time doing that, and decided that dentistry was worthy of helping people understand some business principles. So the passion for health and success in business has really come together around the concept of total health and how to put that together in a way that you could be influential in your community, make a difference in your community, and in the lives of the people we touch, as well as giving my team members an amazing culture and place to work. My team members and their families are very, very important to me. I like to call them wrecked, because once you work in our office, you can't really work anywhere else. I mean, you can, but I mean, it's hard to go backwards and do when the philosophy is about getting to the root cause and helping people make lifestyle related decisions that can impact the future of their lives and their family. And you see the fruits of that labor while you get the chance to do this complex restorative work and do it so beautifully. That's a model that gives team members so incredibly much pride in the mission, the day-to-day mission, that it's really hard to go back to traditional dentistry after that.
Yes. Yeah. The interesting thing, my path is very similar, actually. I've kind of got an entrepreneurial past, as well as a history with Peter Dawson and Joan and everybody. And then, several years after that, realized that my concept of complete dentistry was still incomplete. So, so we're on to the next phase of understanding more about growth and development and
airway and
TMD and how dislocated discs can negatively influence growth and development and breathing, and how all these issues start very, very early on in life, maybe even prenatal.
Right.
And so the playing field has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and more interesting, and you much easier to grasp the more holistic aspects of what we're involved in. So you have to kind of make a decision on, am I all in on this, or am I going to kind of remain sort of a reductionist and a hole filler and a basic care person that's kind of going to ignore everything else that you're now aware of, which is hard. It's hard to unsee it once you've been in that room and listened to Ben Moralia for 2 days or something like that. You feel an obligation to move in this direction, and you're a wonderful example of somebody that's done that, and then has taken it to the next level with regard to teaching it now, and a very effective teacher at that.
Well, thank you. I was just talking to Ben this morning. There was a position paper saying that, why do 50% of all kids in the United States need orthodontics? And we were saying 50%, more like 90%, sort of like, what we've seen from a few generations of kids eating soft commercial food now is just a complete retraction of growth and development. And the orthodontist won't touch them under the age of 6. So the pediatric orthodontics, the stuff that we do at 3 and 4 years old, trying to give kids not just straightening teeth after the bones are developed, as Bill Hain calls it, that's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, right?
Yeah, that's a great metaphor.
So it's interesting in working in those circles, being with people, like-minded people like you, Paul, who see the big picture and see that we could make a much more significant difference if we could even teach parents to go back to breastfeeding and baby-led weaning, and how do we help? I guess it all comes together when you think about backing up and trying to remind people where we came from. We need to be playing outside, not over sanitizing our house, daily movement, eating real food, sleeping real sleep, creating sleeping sanctuaries, and reducing cell phone addiction, and trying to get past the anxiety that 40% of us, including children, are suffering from anxiety. I just started reading The Anxious Generation. It's a very interesting book. It's just
Yeah, I think we're reaching the point where we're having anxiety about having anxiety. It's getting it's becoming a bit of a death spiral. So
I think, if I could interrupt for a minute, I think we're roughly halfway through a 45-minute interview. And so I'm interested. I'm a dentist. I'm listening to this. I hear you. I want to do this. I want to hear how you and Paul have managed to do this. Yes, a worthy goal, but I can't make any money at it. I can't take time to listen to people. I got to make money today. So would either of you, Susan, address that? I mean, see if we can get practical for a few minutes. Help me. I'm a dentist.
Yeah. Let me lead with one question, and then I'll let Susan run with this ball. So you brought up a whole bunch of really, really important things. We're talking about lifestyle now. We're talking about people functioning more effectively in a very toxic environment now. We're talking about working with people in much more sophisticated and profound ways now. So the question is, how do you transition from being a reductionistic dentist where you're really just looking at and thinking about teeth or the alignment of teeth to becoming a whole person practitioner? Obviously, time, as Stan mentioned, time becomes a big factor in that. So one of the transition that has to be made is that you have to see fewer people, but be more effective with the fewer people that you're seeing. Otherwise, you can't make a living doing this. You know,
Maybe.
it's not all about altruism. That's
Mhm.
at some point in time, you got to pay your team, you've got to keep the lights on, and so on and so forth. So I'd be interested in hearing, how you transitioned out of being, a basic care dentist into becoming a whole person dentist, and how you've restructured your new patient relationships. And I'm absolutely certain Bob Fraser probably had something to do with that journey, and maybe or maybe not.
Yeah, with several
and so
people, for sure.
and so, yeah, I'd like to just hear how you made that transition so other people can kind of conceptualize how they can move from where they are right now to closer to your model.
A whole lot of questions. My new patient journey had, I became a student in that. And then I really became a student when Peter Dawson asked me to speak at his 25th anniversary celebration on the new patient experience. And I watched videos of him and thought, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I didn't like what Pete was doing because he was the expert and they were doing this and he was doing
Right.
all the talking.
Right.
And I had been very much influenced by people like Terry Goss and Mary Osborne and Joan Undershoots, the whole curiosity model and all of that. So yes, I think it's true that we need to be much more curious and ask much more powerful questions to get at what the patient knows about themselves before we tell them what we know. So that's a whole other conversation. And yes, our new patient experiences are 2.5 hours long. And so of course we have to be discerning about who gets those slots because we only do 2 a week. So, but to say that we treat fewer patients, I'm not sure I could agree with that. I have 3 chairs of hygiene. Half my practice is pediatric. And I think the role of the hygienist is powerful. The hygienist is the only healthcare professional who sees patients on a regular basis with a health-related relationship. They come to her presumably healthy without a problem focus. And she has the time. There's no one else in healthcare that gets that. So being able to work with hygienists in a much more preventive role is critically important. But Stan, you asked what is it that we were doing practically in practice to be able to make this a profitable model? And I would have to say, if I had to pick the low-hanging fruit in my practice history, and by the way, I don't know if I put a lot of thought, Stan, into how to help dentists create that. I created an entire online learning academy to do that. And the academy looks like a menu. It looks like if you wanted to start with perio bundling and looking at diabetes and food sensitivities with perio and all of that, you could start there. If you wanted to start with pediatric, airway or sleep disorder breathing, you could start there. If you wanted to start with facilitation and the new patient experience, you could start there. So it's probably 3 to 5 years of work. And I did that because Henry Schein bought 30 days a week from me for speaking, and all of my audiences were like, now what? How do we start? Where do we go? And I would say, well, what's most interesting to you? But it's very hard to give people a curriculum that doesn't exist. So I created one, and it's called Total Health Academy, and you all can look at that. It's available on a monthly membership, so you could try it out for a little while and see if you and your team might like it or not like it.
Now, would that be a place that a frustrated dentist could go to get a glimpse of how to do this?
Absolutely. And my guess is if this is something you want to create, you can have it all. I'm going to give you some of the low-hanging fruit that have made us successful that is included in Total Health Academy. One of them is the hands-on learning lab. About 22 years ago, I was influenced by Bob Barkley through what was the American Academy of Dental Practice Administration, now called the Academy for Private Dental Practice. Bruce Peterson was a big follower of Bob Barkley, and had shifted his pediatric program to what he called self-prophy, which is basically instead of polishing teeth, because there's never been efficacy in polishing enamel other than to remove stain. And yet we continue to do it. I don't know why, but he shifted from polishing teeth and throwing a toothbrush in a bag to truly helping children, mentoring children to achieve a self-prophy. Like, how do we allow choice and allow them to participate and grow skills and develop their skills as they get older? So we started doing this model of self-prophy, trying to put kids in the driver's seat again. By the time they are, we wanted them by the time they're 18 to have skills, beliefs, and habitual behaviors for a lifetime of oral health. And we shifted it to oral and systemic health a number of years ago. So to do that, we stain the plaque on their teeth. They choose whatever instruments they want to clean their teeth with. And in a mentored approach to self-care and a lighted magnified mirror, they clean all the plaque off their own teeth, and then struggle with how to get to the areas that they're not getting and help them develop that. And then we track behavior, what they chose to work with, the goals that they've made, the improvements since last time, where they're stumbling, what obstacles they're working with, whether it's gagging or manual dexterity or ortho appliances or whatever it is they're struggling with. And we sort of track behavior, and we set recare based on their developmental needs. And so part of it is, it's just a whole different mindset. But
isn't part of this in the educational system where we are so focused on mechanically fixing things? Where can we lead a person who's listening to this to learn more about people, to love people, listen to people, quit talking, quit being an expert, ask questions? Where do we get that education? Where did you get that?
A big stumbling block in this is you're talking about a different compensation model, right?
No, not really, because although we have an hour for kids and many people don't. What I was going to tell you, what we do with the time after the self-prophy is we do hands-on science experiences. One of the things I didn't tell you about my doctor was, in order to help me learn about my lungs, she handed me a little piece of bubble plastic and said, "This represents your lungs. These little sacs of air are the little sacs in your lungs, and in the plastic is where the blood vessels are that pick up the oxygen that go to every cell in your body. And your lungs don't look like this. They're full of pus and moisture. And I want you to keep this in mind as you're moving into this arena, is how we're going to create healthy lungs that look like this." So by the time I looked under a microscope in dental school at lung tissue, I was like, I know you, I know who you are. Those indelible science experiences that have transferable knowledge are what we focused on. So we have 60 different science experiences that we do with kids. In addition to the self-prophy, they're all about, I would say a third of them are about dentistry. And many of I just had 3 more graduate this year, 1 from ortho, 1 from pedo, 1 from dental school. And I just wrote 3 more applications. We now have, I think this is 51 dentists from our program, literally from our office, that have been influenced by this. So they get a big dose of dentistry in there. They've looked under a microscope, placed a sealant on an extracted tooth, taken an alginate of their own mouth and poured it up, and done salivary diagnostics and all kinds of things in the learning lab.
But how do you get paid? How do you get paid for this? I mean, this is very time consuming.
Really good question. We don't. We get paid for prophy exam, bite wings, and fluoride varnish, and just like everyone else. So the hands-on science experience is a lost leader in a way. When I say it as a business principle, it makes a huge difference in kids' lives building this curriculum. But we also draw people from miles and miles away who come with their entire family. We get a lot of homeschooled kids, a lot of families with 6 or 8 kids. They may not even have dental insurance, but it's worth it for them, for their kids to have this healthy mindset. Many of these people share our values, and because they share values, we build inherent trust. They tell all of their friends, and now we're choosing our patients before they choose us. By telling them who we are, we're attracting people who are like-minded and like-valued, and who are glad to spend their discretionary dollars where their values are, which is on health. So it's not like pushing insurance stuff
Right.
around all the time, right?
So
But
you become a teaching center as a
yes, for
loss
sure,
leader,
for sure.
and you staff that, and then from that loss leader, like any business, you then develop relationships.
And I warn the parents that if your kid hangs around here, they're likely to develop an interest in dentistry as a career. And I often have a young person with a white coat shadowing me, and it might be a high school student. And that, keep in mind, not someone in dental school, right? So we have become a teaching center, but I want them also see if the parents at home are delivering a fairly healthy message. You want your healthcare professionals to support that, and them to have a relationship with their hygienist and with their dentist who cares about them as well, and their dental assistant. So the entire vibe of the practice is a mindset toward health, and that basically allows it increases case acceptance. Again, no one wants to sit for a 2.5-hour new patient exam where an hour of it is an interview, or at least an hour of it is an interview. Where we get to know each other and figure out everything from, you know, GI dysfunction to anxiety, depression, to medications, to helping them sort out if they're in the right hands, do they have the right healthcare professionals, and how can we help build a better team for them? And so there's a lot that we're doing for patients, and we don't get paid a lot for that exam, but I can tell you that when you're able to deliver a comprehensive treatment plan that slows down enough to help them turn the ship around in the process of restoring the deck, right? We can seriously increase our case acceptance and do the dentistry that we've been trained to do. And they're so grateful for it.
So really, to sort of recap what you just shared beautifully, Susan, is it all started with a philosophy that about which you are all in, which had links all the way back to your early childhood experiences in terms of the depth of your personal value and commitment to that, which led to the creation of hiring very carefully, hiring the right people and developing them, which ultimately created a climate and a culture and ultimately a brand that is now drawing people from hours away in groups, even though you don't take assignment of benefits. It's the value proposition is so great that the money is a very fair trade for what they receive.
Right. I agree. Yep. The infant oral health exam under the age of 1, the hands-on learning lab, the perio bundling, the pediatric airway part of the practice, the adult comprehensive approach to care. Those are things that have become pinnacles of success for us.
Yeah.
And
all of those things dramatically separate you from most of everything that's going on nearby. That's why people will drive by 100 dentists to go to you and not have you take their insurance. And this is an important thing for people to hear and understand, that this is possible to create a practice like this that's very unique, and it has this kind of drawing power, but it takes a lot of work. It just doesn't happen overnight. And the thing that I'm just really trying to point out is that the very center of this is Susan's philosophy, about which she is hardcore committed to. And she's very careful, I'm certain, about selecting people that are in alignment with that to be part of her team. So whether or not she's in the room, that philosophy is being communicated verbally and non-verbally all the time. And your learning lab and your other science experiments and so forth, these are all just experiential ways of people learning more about your philosophy and the relevance of it to them.
For sure.
So these are brilliant things, and I think we could all learn a lot from you. And it's fantastic that you're sharing this and have done all this work to do so.
It is not a charitable. 10% of what we do is for nothing. we set aside that charitable contribution. But this office is well, between my partner and I think we have 36 hours of 34 hours of clinic time available, and it's a couple $1 million practice, little more than that. So it's a it's a very successful model. And again, we're not in a very wealthy area at all. Very very middle class. I can put it with a capital V. And people come to us thinking, this is where we are in, Hope,
Right.
Michigan. Yeah.
Right.
Pretty
So which is a very good example of how people's value towards health is only loosely associated, if at all, with how much money they make or how wealthy they are. Having
Right.
personal health as a value has very little to do with what job a person has or how much money they make. It's a personal holding that they have. And so you need to kind of open your mind to that. She's not just target marketing to the top 10%
Oh gosh, no.
money
I
earners.
don't care about the money.
She's very solidly marketing to and delivering to the middle class or even lower middle class, I'm sure.
I'm compelled to share with you, Paul, that the definition of niche in the marketing research says any area that the public is clamoring for that's unmet by the current offerings in the community. And this is a niche. The public who care about health are clamoring for people who also care about their health.
Right.
And there are very few people in that arena, which means they don't, with the internet now, they can find you.
Yeah, there's tremendous amount of people out there who are very frustrated by the outcomes of their current experiences, whether it's with dentists or physicians or other paraprofessionals. They don't feel like they're being heard. They don't feel like they're being managed in any kind of strategic or comprehensive way. And that's not to say that's everybody. That's just the discerning people. But the discerning people are forever on the hunt to find somebody that's closer in alignment with what they seek. They may not even be exactly able to define that yet. You may have to help them to define that, but they know there's something missing. And so as we loop back around to the value of a 2-hour new patient experience appointment, that's where that process begins. The discovery of alignment of values and really discovery within each person how much of a priority they put on the things that they're starting to learn more about. And so it's very developmental. Everything that you've talked about is about developmental learning, and to create a practice model built on that, and that's pure Barkley. We're talking about ideas that were developed 60 years ago that are even more relevant today.
Oh my gosh.
Because the medical system has broken down so much farther, because the physicians have no time to talk to you now. They have no incentive to talk to you now.
Yeah.
And so, it's putting more and more burden on the individual to carry that water for themselves or to seek out people who can help them. So if you can find a way to create this culture and this brand and get it out into the community, you are going to be blessed with more people than you can manage.
Amen, brother. I have to say, I often think that Bob Barkley would be so proud of the perio model that we're able to develop around not just trying to create white tight gums, but a microbial profile that matches success for the future for them. And, the American Academy of Periodontics says you really can't do that. You can just sort of manage disease. And we totally blow that away. We can create that, but we have to realize it's a host immune response to a set of bugs that might be significantly dangerous to the mouth and the body. And how do we shift that? And how do we look at everything from saliva flow, the medications they're on, the number of autoimmune, there's food sensitivities. There's so many other things to consider other than what calculus did we leave on their teeth. That seems crazy.
That's totally yesterday's thinking.
I know. It's
And
the way the world's
yeah,
going. If you look at corporate dentistry, they're just getting paid.
yes.
So where do I go to get the skills? I'm an engineering mindset. I make a great dentist. I don't know how to get the skills to sit and talk to someone for 2 hours to ask questions. Where do I go to get that skill? Either of you.
Stan, this is that I was just about to say, if you really were a dentist and if you really were asking that question, I would say, what do you know? I'd start with curiosity. What are you interested in learning? What do you know? You just asked, how do I learn facilitation? I would say probably, facilitation. I would say Terry Goss or Janice Dupartey, Mary Osborne, some of these people that have been really instrumental in helping us learn that skill. I have a real good introduction to it all on Total Health Academy for sure. It's a critical area for all of us, but it is the one thing that my team members and I do every year in a retreat offsite for 2.5 days. Is we take a full day and just work on facilitation skills with Terry Goss and Janice Dupartey in-house. So they come from Folsom, California and Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and come to us, and we grapple with that, because you can never master the human mind, right? You have to be willing to know that if you take team members and individual abilities for communication and facilitation, we need to continue to foster them, just like we're doing the children in the learning lab, right? All of us are at different stages. We've got one person that works with me for 29 years who's masterful facilitator. I have a hygienist who's been there for 30 years, again, masterful, but she's been at it for a lot of years. But you can do individual coaching. Terry and Janice both do coaching. I don't know if Mary does individual coaching, but there are a few people around who teach it
Yes,
well.
she does.
Yeah.
The way I would tend to answer that question, Stan, is if you can identify a practice that appeals to you on a very high level, find a way to get in there and walk around.
Love it.
Feel it, smell it, see it, ask some curious questions. And from there, then you can do all the things that Susan just said. But I think the key thing is to get to a place where you can conceptualize where you want to go.
I love that.
And I think that's what drove you. I mean, I think you were able to create that vision in your mind pretty early on, so that you were every decision that you made going forward aligned with that and built on that. And I think that's where it tends to break down for people. If they can't see the big picture in the beginning, then they tend to just sort of randomly sample from here and there, and they really don't know how it all fits together, because at the core of it is a philosophy, a deeply held personal philosophy. So if you can find a person whose philosophy is very close to yours, then that's a good place to begin to start the mental conceptualization of where you want to take your practice. And just like you've said several things that I think are very helpful for people to hear. You practice in a not so favorable demographic.
Correct.
That creates certain challenges.
Correct.
But they're not insurmountable. And that's an important thing to say, because I mean, most people are not practicing in the perfect demographic, and they don't have the perfect scenario, at least out of the gate.
Say, if you can do it in Michigan, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah, they've got to build towards that. And so the beginning of that process is to create that conceptualization in your mind.
I love that. Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind. And I think that's really true. I have a very creative brain. And I always feel like dentistry's been all about breaking rules for me. It's like, if something should be done differently, let's do it differently. And instead of saying, what will insurance allow and how can I charge for this or that? Like, if we do it differently, if we're brave enough to say, this is the way this should be done. This is the way I'd want it to be for me. And for my loved ones, and then we'll figure out how to get some compensation around it. Let's try it. And like any procedures you're doing for the first time, I hope you're discounting it a little bit while you're practicing.
You're creating the value first, and then you're promoting it, and then you're selling it. So it's not picking through the list and seeing, is there a code for this? Is there a code for that? There's an outcome you're trying to create, and then you build back from that. How do we create an experience that builds towards people making better decisions for themselves, right?
Yep.
That sounds big and broad and fuzzy, but it's really central to everything that you're doing.
You're welcome to get on a plane and come to my office and shadow me to see it. I like people to see, sort of be a fly on the wall to see if this is really happening. It's fun for people, and we'd love to have you. It's very much of a teaching center. And at the same time, we created Total Health Academy so that I'm speaking on one side of the screen, the slides are on the other, and in the file vault is everything you need, from the very interesting interactional health history to the screening tools to the hands-on learning lab to the perio, oral and systemic risks, all of that. So it's pretty interesting stuff. All the marketing materials are there. You can make it your own. So it's a turnkey kind of deal, not without some work, because just learning it doesn't mean you get to all of a sudden do it.
We are running a little bit long in this recording, and I don't want to consume too much of our audience's time. So in my mind, we've barely scratched the surface, and this conversation needs to be continued on for at least one more, or perhaps more than one segment. So let's put a pin in it right now. We've covered a lot of important topics, really a lot of things for people to think about, particularly if they're wanting to transition in this direction. We're going to get you some resources to connect to continue your thinking and maybe make some decisions. And then we're going to pick up this conversation at another time and continue on, because this is fantastic stuff. I think it's immediately relevant to where we are in this time, in the collapse of our country's healthcare system, and the tremendous opportunity that dentists have to step into this space and assume a leadership role. So let Susan finish up here. I'll let you do the wrap up, because I know you can do that well. You're a very high level speaker. So let me do that, and we will catch up with you next time.
Great. Paul, I just wanted to say how grateful I am for the work that you're doing. And I know that the reason you feel like we've just scratched the surface is because you and I are so like-minded and like-valued. And so if anyone is this deep into the conversation and still listening, you're our people too. And that's the beauty of this, is that we connect through the work that we're doing. And I would love to help you become more successful, as I know Paul and Stan are all in on your success, or we wouldn't be doing this. For all three of us, this is a generous offering. I know you don't make a lot of money doing a podcast, and I have my own, so the Brave Parent Podcast. So I know that, and I know that our passion is here to help you. And I'm super grateful for the invitation, and for your book, and for all that you're doing. And thank you for including me.
I'm going to place on the screen now a picture of Dr. Henny's book that he just published that is very, very much on this same subject. And thank you all for watching for so long, and we will see you the next time.